All right, I think we're going to have a little difference of opinion here, Rand, because we've agreed mostly on the players we've talked about so far. Number 7 on my list, Baylor redshirt junior Sawyer Robertson. He's almost 22 and a half years old, so a little older than some of the guys we've talked about. 6'4", 240. And I have him ranked just a smidge higher than the players we've all talked about. They're in the same bucket, but in terms of our conversation here, Sawyer Robertson's a little higher. I had a hard time coming with a comp for him. Size wise, he's got a little Davis Webb to him, but I don't feel great about that, and we can revisit that. But I think if I have your list right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you had Sawyer at 12. So there's a little difference between you and me on that, and that's good. I'm okay with that. We can talk about it here. Let's see here. Nuance in the pocket. Does a lot of little things that I like. He looks off safeties and he'll rip the ball on ends on the other side of the field. I thought he threw a consistently catchable deep ball, enough to loft underneath it to allow his wide receivers to run under it. Ball comes out quickly and accurately in the quick game. Can throw from different arm angles. And I thought he was tough. He will hang in the pocket and take a hit and deliver a ball down the field. And I hate saying sneaky athlete, but he's a pretty good athlete. They have some design runs in there for him at Baylor. He's not going to be Lenore Sellers, nor will he ever be confused for Lenore Sellers, but he can move a little bit for you if you need him to. I do wonder how strong his arm is, however. And look, man, that's the biggest question when you're talking about making NFL throws. Throws a little tougher in college because of the hash marks. But again, number 7 on my list. I want to hear why you had him at number 12.
I'm just going to just be honest. I just didn't think anything physically like jumped off the tape to me. And it's just, I kept looking. And again, I watched the Iowa State game. I watched the Houston game. I watched the LSU game. And I was just waiting for that one physical thing to jump off the tape where you're like, okay, this is a trait we can hang our hat on. And I didn't quite see it. I see him at this point being an eventual backup quarterback. Like you said, I thought he was a good quarterback athlete. I liked the size. And I thought his arm strength was probably right at the low level of being good. And, he uses his athleticism to extend plays. And I think he can run, but I think more of his athleticism is to move outside of the pocket. And I thought he did a good job of keeping his eyes downfield as he was extending plays. Now, again, going back to him and the mechanics of him playing quarterback, I thought in the pocket a lot. He didn't play, with his knees bent. I thought a lot of times in the pocket he was straight-legged, narrow based. And I thought that, mixed that with him having a little bit of a wind-up delivery, it allowed the corners to jump passes that you saw in the games that I watched, and I didn't think he threw the tightest ball necessary. So, it was just those things. And I made notes for myself. Like I want to go back and kind of study his third down passes and his fourth down pass. And I felt like Baylor in the games I watched, they went for it a lot on fourth down. So I want to go back and look at those numbers. And, I have to say, I didn't feel like he had the best supporting cast at Baylor as well. And obviously that hinders you. But I had him a little bit further down. Again, just nothing really jumped off the tape, in the games I viewed. Maybe I need to go back and look at some other games at this point just to see and just to confirm. But he was a little bit further down on the list for me at number 12.
Producer Sharon, Rand talked about not the best supporting cast. He explained to me that you can't have a receiver wearing number 34, which Baylor does, and I think that got Rand's attention. Put him in a number 3 or number 4, not a number 34. He might have been a running back. I'm not sure. But it's interesting you say that about the lack of consistent spirals on some of the throws, because that does stick out to you if you're watching, and you want to know why doesn't the ball come off his hand as well as it does for some other guys. And you're not surprisingly, but right on this. The big time throws last season, he had 15. They were all pretty much deep balls with great touch and accuracy at second, third levels, and those get your attention. But the turnover-worthy plays, he had 16, so one more than the big-time throws. He got fooled by coverages a lot. He would predetermine these second-level throws, and he would be loose with the ball behind the line of scrimmage. And look, you can get away with that if you're Lamar Jackson. You can't get away with it if you're a mostly pocket passer. One other thing I want to ask you, Rand, about Sawyer in particular is arm strength, and you talk about right there at the edge. How would it compare to someone like Brock Purdy, who was Mr. Relevant, but obviously just got paid because he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now?
Yeah, I think with Brock, I think Sawyer's arm is probably a smidge better than Brock. But Brock's, the thing that helped Brock was obviously the anticipation and the accuracy and just knowing where to go with the football. And the thing that Brock learned the more he played and had the supporting cast that he had in San Francisco was just get the ball on the guys and put it in a position where they could do the work. With Debo, with Kittle, put the ball out in front so they could catch it and move. You don't want to necessarily put it on the back hip unless you're protecting them, getting them to turn away from a impending defender. But put it in a way where they can catch it with their momentum going forward and give them a chance to do what they do best, which is run after the catch. And the same thing with Brandon Ayuk. And I think he grew even more as a quarterback when he realized what he had in his weapons and that he didn't have to be pinpoint accurate. He just had to put it in a spot where they could get it and allow them to do their thing. It's kind of like playing point guard. You have to figure out where every one of your guys, where they like the ball. Like the really good ones, I remember seeing a video with Jason Williams, White Chocolate, and he knew where every guy on the court, where they liked the ball. And so he made that his duty. I'm going to get you the ball in the spot and in a way that you like it so you can catch and shoot or dribble drive to the basket. And it's the same thing playing quarterback.
Shout out Jason Williams. Crazy to think that both he and Randy Moss were from West Virginia. I think they played together at some point. One of the best 2v2 teams ever. One of the other things I wanted to make note of, and you talked about maybe Sawyer's arm's a little bit better than Brock's, but you talked about all the things that Brock does well and you have to do well at the next level. And we sort of talked about that in previous blocks earlier today, that you have to be able to throw with anticipation. Your accuracy has to be through the roof, and Brock checks all those boxes. We'll see what that means for Sawyer. He was a Mississippi State transfer. He went to Baylor and obviously had a pretty good season, has a chance to build on that. I don't know if he's going to find his way into day two. Day two is sort of this weird sort of landing spot for quarterbacks because typically you either go top 32 or then teams wait on you. And that's sort of what happened this year outside of Tyler Shuck. Before we take a break, though, I wanted to go through our summer list from a year ago now that we have a moment, just to sort of point out all the things we don't know when we're talking about quarterbacks, 9 months before the draft, or in this case, 298 days. I mentioned Carson Beck was my number one. Shedeur was my number two, and that held throughout. He was my number two through the draft, obviously went in the fifth round. Quinn Ewers was my number three, and we talk a lot about Shedeur. Quinn had a tougher draft process than Shedeur did. He ended up going, I think, sixth or maybe even seventh round to the Dolphins. Jalen Milroe, who I had a mid-day two grade on last summer, and that's exactly where he went. Oh, look at this, Ran. Some guy named Cam Ward was 5, and that's an example of a guy. Questions coming out of Washington State, wanted to see what it looked like when he transferred to U and took full advantage of that. So I'll ask you, what did Cam Ward do that maybe some of these guys we're going to talk about need to do to take that leap from? And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I talked to teams that had Cam Ward as a day 3 guy, 2 years ago, and now first overall pick a couple weeks ago.
I'll say this. Had Cam Ward left Washington State, I agree he would have been probably a day 3 pick. If he left early, probably would have been a 4th round pick. You would just have to know Cam and how he plays, and Cam just has that ability to raise the level of the guys around him in just the way he plays. But then if you saw the way he played at Miami, he ran the offense. And the offense ran through him, and just the way he played the quarterback position, he distributed the ball. And what you like to see out of these quote unquote franchise quarterbacks is, are you the reason why your team wins? Right. And that's why I don't like, throwing this franchise quarterback tag around, because in my opinion, God only made 3 or 4. If we're being honest about the 32 starting quarterbacks in the league and we're using the real franchise quarterback label, there are only 3 or 4 of those guys. And the rest of the guys are good quarterbacks, but Cam Ward does have franchise quarterback it about him and the way he plays. And so God only made 3 or 4 of those. And that's why I don't believe in running these quarterbacks up the board, because it's just an unfaulty expectation put on them that they're not ready for.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And, everyone knows this. Sometimes demand outstrips supply. So you overdraft these young men, and rarely does it work out. And sometimes it does, but it's a hard, good luck playing a tougher position in any sport, and good luck trying to find that position when you're in the position to draft these players. In case you're wondering, I had Drew Aller number 6 a year ago. He came back to school, which I thought was the right move. Riley Leonard was number 7, and a lot of that was just on potential. I don't think he quite reached it. Garrett Nussmeier was 8, came back to school. We'll probably talk about him. Number 9, Connor Wegman, didn't quite reach expectations. He transferred out of Texas A&M. And then finally, Jackson Dart was number 10, ended up being the other quarterback to go in the first round back in April. So a lot can change is what I'm saying when you look at this list 298 days from now.